Yeah, can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, hi everybody. Yes, I am going to do our report out about the data standardization work group this month. So we have been meeting every 3 weeks. Last time we met, we were able to come sort of to a decision around our aim statement. And here you can see there's updates to the aim statement. Oh, good. I was just going to ask if there were slides. Great. So you can see here, we now have it updated to say by the end of this year, our CPI Path Collaborative will increase the number of ECM and community supports eligible beneficiaries who are enrolled, engaged, and successfully billed for high quality services that are data driven, linguistically, and culturally appropriate. And that's language we've looked at for a while, but you can see down below, we split it out actually into two sections for looking at enhanced care management and then for community support separately. So for enhanced care management, we want to actually increase the enrollment. We're going to focus on enrollment for this aim statement. Enrollment of eligible members from 16% to 31%, which is actually increasing the number of beneficiaries in total number enrolled by almost 15,000. You can see that number there, 14,742. And that was based on the data that came from Q4 2022. And so that's going to be our baseline data that we're starting from. And then we'll measure again at the end of December, so end of Q4 2023, and look to see if we've met that increase. And so that's really actually representative of an increase in the total number of individuals. It's 100% increase. So I know in this statement, there's a few different percentages in there, but essentially it's to increase the number of individuals enrolled by 14,742. And then community supports, we did sort of a similar style, but we're looking at increasing the enrollment of eligible members from 1.76% to 2.38%. And that is actually an increase of 1,100 members. Again, looking at that same time periods from Q4 2022 to December 31st, 2023. And we came to this conclusion as a group, but we were looking at the data to see how the enrollment had increased over time with the available data that we had, which was through, I believe, Q2 of 2023. And then, oh yeah, here we go, great. And so we looked at how the data was, or I'm sorry, how the numbers were increasing and looking at the sort of that increase, how many people were enrolled in each quarter. And because of some of the populations of focus becoming live in July of this year, we knew there would be a natural increase because of that. Again, some sort of natural increases because of all the work that's being done already. And so it felt like that 100% increase that we just showed on those previous slides felt doable for the enhanced care management enrollment. And then sort of a similar process we went through for the community supports, where you can see those numbers are smaller. Here in the graph you can see, and so those total percentage enrolled is smaller, and then we have kind of a smaller aim of increasing, just to kind of reflect what we've seen so far and what we anticipate would be possible through the end of this year. Okay, thank you. And then what we are also doing with the work group is there were 4 priority areas that were identified as a possibility for us to focus on through the rest of the year. And so right now, I think our voting may have just closed or is closing very shortly. We were as a group voting on which priority we should focus on through the rest of the year. So next time we meet here, we'll definitely be able to report back on what decision was made and sort of what steps we've come up with. But it's all, of course, focused around data, how we can either enhance data sharing, or thinking about one idea we had talked about was looking at how the data exchange framework that's coming should be coming live for some organizations in 2024, like what that's going to look like for our county. And so yeah, we'll report back next time on what we decided on and how we're going to move forward with that. And then the last thing is, like you see here, the last bits on the slide here are around a charter. So we're going to develop a charter for the data standardization work group. Will help us sort of keep sort of focus on scope and pull in some of the decisions and that were made earlier in this year, and make sure we kind of all have that in mind as we're moving forward on you know, what we want to focus on and how we want to approach that. And it will also be a really good tool. So if we get new members, which everybody and any, you know, is welcome, please join if you're interested. That will just kind of help be a good document to explain sort of what we're doing and what our goals are. So that is also in process. And we have chair and co-chair now, you know, for the work group. So more to come from us, but that's kind of what we've been working on.
Thank you so much for sharing, Amelia. And I know it's sort of last minute, we put you on the spot here. So I really appreciate you doing it. I'm really excited for the group to move forward and to not only sort of analyze data that we've been discussing at a high level, but also looking at sort of the existing infrastructure and supporting the county and all of the stakeholders moving forward. So I'm really excited to see how that moves forward. The other thing that we want to ask you all as it relates to data is to, if you haven't already, for those of you who may not remember, it doesn't, we have a way to update and de-identify or deduplicate this survey. So please go ahead and launch the survey for me, Emily. This is tied to our measurement strategy. So I barely remember yesterday, so I'll give you all a quick recap. Ideally, our intent was to ask you the same questions once a quarter in order to measure certain things over a period of time. Those things that we are measuring are part of our existing measurement strategy that we all shared with you earlier in the year. We will share the strategy document with you all again after the meeting. But this is the quarterly submission of that. And so instead of emailing you with surveys, we're going to spend a couple of minutes and let you all complete that in the next few minutes.
Well, that's very nice. Thank you.
If I could just like wave a magic wand and make all surveys go away no. It's so hard when we think about it as it relates to data collection. There's a huge need, but it's still it's a lot for all of you. So we appreciate you taking the time to do it. Go ahead, Robert. You're on mute though.
In regards to data, and it's only a suggestion, or maybe they might even be looking at it from the same set of lenses. If they would, is it possible they can narrow their focus? And this is primarily because of what me and you talked about when the meeting first came on, with the justice involved in 90-day enrollment in REACH being pushed back all the way until October. So is there a way to, on that same scale that they're doing their enrollment and the same percentage, is there any way they can add the justice involved population and justice involved overall? Because we have U.S. federal, we have state parole, and we have county probation. And then in sub areas for that population, because of the type of care, how many are disabled and how many are seniors, with those two connections back to the justice system, if that's at all possible. So we can start getting another range at the end of 2024, or when 2024 gets here, to see how that population is actually being affected and in the enrollment process. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense. We've started to collect, and the managed care plans have shared with us population of focus data. I think all things are possible, right? When we talk about data and data sharing, but also recognize that there's more to just sharing the data, right? There's data normalization. Not everything is the same. It's an additional level of granularity. What could we do to increase efficiencies? So we're not necessarily going to the managed care plans with a new request. Might there be other opportunities for us to look at data collection in an efficient way? But I think it's a valid ask. Managed care plans will, to a certain degree, be recording justice involved as a population of focus. So that aligns, with the change. But the other additional granular points may be a little bit trickier. So, Amelia, I see your hands up.
Yeah, just to add a little bit, Denise, to what you were saying, is one thing that the data standardization work group has talked about is looking at those measures that we just showed, those aim statements, but by population of focus. And so what we need to work on is, figuring out what that denominator would be. So there's some things we still need to, work on and come to an agreement on how we want to measure that. But like Denise was just saying, the managed care plans have been sharing data that would allow us to figure out, of how many people we think would be eligible for ECM in that justice involved population of focus, how many people are being enrolled. And so that's definitely something that's, I think, a high priority for our group, and we just need to keep working on it. It's not quite ready yet. So I think that will be really helpful though for what you're talking about.
Thank you. Thank you, Amelia, and thank you, Robert, for sharing.
Thank you, Amelia.
We're okay to go ahead and end the poll for now. Thank you, Emily. We've reached 50% participation. Again, thanks everybody for doing that for us. We will be able to share other aspects of the measurement strategy, like I said, with you all, and we'll be able to kind of look at what was completed in the survey last quarter against the responses this quarter. So additional updates on some of the things that we've been talking about over the last few months. I can't believe it's only been a month since we all saw each other. It feels like in this crazy world that we live in that like 5 months have gone by already since. But we do have some updates to share and some questions as it relates to those activities. So the first is the best practice playbook. So this was thank you, Jennifer. We'll send you the link for that. So we identified in September, for those who were not at the in-person, or for those that were but are like me and need just a quick reminder, we got together and we started talking about things that are happening in the community that are working well. And we voted through an activity called Pair and Share, or 1-2 for All, where folks get together and share best practices and vote until we distill down a few best practices and start to highlight them for the community. So we are working right now on the best practice playbook version 1, based on these 3 best practices that were identified in the September's in-person. So we're working with each of the organizations for these best practices. And then in addition to that, we will put together supporting materials and an outline of that information in more detail. And then we'll ask you all if you you know, if one of these best practices resonates and it's something that you want to do for your organization, it makes sense. That if you do that best practice based on the playbook, if you could report back to us and let us know what your experience was. So 2 things out of this best practice playbook that we're really looking to do is to just really surface that knowledge, peer-to-peer knowledge that's happening already in the community. And then in addition to that, sort of leverage those things that are happening, those strengths, to support organizations that aren't necessarily looking at this individual activity, outcome, experience through the same lens, right? So, you know, one person may be having a problem with this one workflow, and we've elevated a best practice that might help support that. We're also going to pull in best practices that have been identified across the state. They may or may not be as applicable to the region from a local level standpoint, and we recognize that. But we want to be able to put everything together in a single playbook to be the most effective and efficient for you all, so that you don't have to go to 6 different places for that information, and that we're also elevating things that are happening in other regions that we may not know about sort of on a day-to-day basis. So that is coming your way shortly. We're working away at it. We have, I think, a pretty good outline and framework. And ideally, I think we're looking to get that done in the next few weeks. In addition to the best practices playbook, we also are providing a webinar next Friday. If you're interested, we have the link to that. CDII is also hosting some webinars. We put the dates on this page. Why am I sharing all of this with you? The data exchange framework is just that, right? It's a rules of the road, a framework that is been announced for the state of California. And it has a couple of different things attached. So it has what we would call signatories, required signatories, and optional or encouraged signatories. Most of the folks here on the phone, I think maybe not the FQs probably for the most part, and the managed care plans, but most of the other community-based organizations, enhanced care management providers, and community supports providers fall under that encouraged signatory, which means that you have a longer runway should you choose to participate in the data exchange framework, which essentially, if we think about it, it is, what it says it is. It's about being able to exchange data electronically through a series of policies and procedures that you must comply with. A whole lot of information. We won't get into the weeds today. I'm bringing this up because there is funding that is now available to you that wasn't necessarily there before. That opened up on the 16th of October, which was just last Monday, and is available to all signatories. So for those enhanced care management providers and community supports providers that are interested in the data exchange framework, we encourage you to participate next Friday in that overview, and then we'll be able to answer any questions that you have about the data exchange framework. Another important point about that, yes, there is, Jenny, we can jot that down as an action item. We can send you some more information on that funding link. That bottom source that highlighted in yellow, which says new DXF DSA grants website, should take you to that information as well. And then we'll also talk about it next Friday. The other thing that we're going to talk about next Friday is something called a QHIO. Great news, folks. you are in San Diego, and San Diego Health Connect was announced as one of the qualified health information organizations. I know it's a mouthful. We live in a world of acronyms. Sorry for throwing another one your way. But really think about QHIOs as a hub. They have certain requirements which they'll have to comply with. And we're going to talk about them more next Friday. But the way that I explain for those who are not familiar with HIO, Health Information Organization, HIE, Health Information Exchange, RHIO, Regional Health Information Organization, and now a QHIO, a Qualified Health Information Organization. The Q means that they're going to go through a certificate process which says that they can comply with certain policies and procedures. In many cases, from what I see here on the page, these organizations were legacy HIOs, which means they're already familiar with a vast majority of what it means to be a hub for data exchange. And so we'll spend some time talking about those QHIOs next Friday. We'll also speak to more specifically why you would consider or maybe not consider connecting to a QHIO. What are some of the benefits for enhanced care management providers and community support providers? What are some of the things that you'll want to think about before perhaps you make a decision? And sort of what are some of the timeframes associated with some of those decisions? So if you're interested, that's next Friday. The county has also been kind enough to post that link on their website as well. We'll have it here for you. It is in our Slack channel, but if you have other people that you want to join that session, it is open to the public. You don't have to be participating with the CPI. So if you have other folks that you want to recommend to attend, please go ahead and send them that registration link. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to do is talk a little bit about Q3 deliverables. And I'll get some information from you all. It doesn't necessarily have to be today, but I would love to be more transparent about what we submit to the state and to our third-party administrator, our sort of governing body, as it relates to this work, to the past CPI collaborative work. To what extent you want to see the granularity, I don't know, and we can talk a little bit about that. But I pulled from our submission what we put and translate into something called a PDSA. Some of you on the phone or on the Zoom today are familiar with PDSAs and quality improvement methodology. Some of you aren't. But really, we've been doing these things and just not calling them these things for the better part of the year in different ways. And so I'll pick on Calium Academy because we just got off of a best practice webinar about Calium Academy. So it got its start from the managed care plans who said, wouldn't it be great, since we all collaborate in the county, if we could come together and look at some of these trainings that we do for our contracted providers and bring them together in a centralized, singular way, so that we don't necessarily have to go around to different meetings and sort of repeat the same presentation. In addition to that, individual participants who contract with more than one managed care plan don't have to listen to the same or similar spiel, by each of the managed care plans. So it's really about efficiencies, centralizing a message, and efficiencies on both sides for the managed care plans and for the participants. So that's sort of how it was designed or how it was created, the reasoning behind it, but it's really evolved And we'll share with you guys the deck and the presentation that we did, but just kind of putting it in the PDSA structure. So these we call sort of tests of change, where we do something, we plan to do something, then we do it, we evaluate it, and then we apply the lessons learned, and we make a decision on a path forward, which is all sort of common sense. Yes, that's sort of what we do when we implement changes. Do they work? Do they not work? Do we scrap them? Do we not scrap them? Do we make a few tweaks to them and then see if those tweaks made changes? So this is sort of the way that we verbalize it when we send it to PCG and when we do our quarterly submissions. I'm not going to go through and read everything on the slide, but I will ask you, for those who are interested in learning more about all of the different things that we report on a quarterly basis, let us know. And we'll either set something up to share that information or just continue to bring that to these meetings. Oh, great question, Janet. We have that link for you. Oh, and that's also great to hear too with regards to FQs. You know, I'm a New Yorker, so much of what I see for the data exchange framework mirrors some of the work that's been happening in New York State. It's interesting to me, and I say this all the time now that I'm more familiar with some of the amazing work being done in California, is that the rest of the country is looking to California as really a trailblazer, right? I mean, like, you know, Robert, we've talked about this before too, with justice involved in the 90-day pre-release. Like, so much of what was whole person care and now CalAIM and in the granularity is transformative, but also is work that other states around the country are interested in doing. And so it's really exciting to see some of that unfold in some of the other states. And then similarly, but in reverse order, the data exchange framework is very similar to something that was instituted in New York State a few years back, which was really sort of about the same thing, standardizing data sharing and building a structure so that more data was shared electronically across the state. So the other thing, just to kind of put together sort of a, you know, what is year one and what is year two, and we can get into more granularity another time. But some of the things that we're trying to continue to do before year end, some of the things that we've been able to do by the end of the year, and then some of the things that we'll look to do for next year. So some of you have asked, will there be a PATH CPI next year? There will 1000% be a PATH CPI next year for San Diego. We hope that we'll be your facilitator. We don't have that confirmed just yet, but we are getting closer to that confirmation, and we'll share that with you as soon as we know. We'll also probably start to bug you with some things that we'd like to think about for next year, and we'll spend some more time on that in November. Okay, so I'll get to the activity for today. We are a small group on our side. What are we doing for time? Where are we for time? About 50 minutes left. 50, okay. All right, so the activity for today is expanding on these PDSAs, these Plan, Do, Study, Act. Jenny, I see you have a question.
Hi, sorry to kind of disrupt before we go into the activity, but one question I had was just, I think we've talked about it in previous meetings, and I'm sorry if it's been discussed on a call that I haven't been on, but I think, I mean, obviously all these goals are really great to talk about for this next quarter, but with the changes that are coming as of January 1st, I feel like is there anything else that we can be discussing, or does anyone else have concerns? Because it's great if we, increase these percentages,
Right.
but if then it's all going to drop back down as of January 1st, it's kind of, are we chatting about all this great goals that then we aren't ready or don't know what's going to happen with it or how to rebound from a drop in as of January 1st?
Yeah, I think it's a really great point. It's one that I sort of struggled with. We were putting together the activity for today and we said, like what specifically associated with this activity is going to change January 1st, and to what extent then does it make sense for us to work on implementing changes. And I hope that we've structured the activities in a way that makes sense, but it would be great, Jenna, after I explain the 3 options, if we could do just a check back with you to see if that doesn't align. And then if it doesn't, we can put it on a shelf and we can come back to it later. We meet monthly, and it's I love it, but I'll also recognize that you all are like insanely busy every day of every week of every month. And so if we don't need to do the exercise, then we can shelf it and move into the next activity, which is the managed care plan office hours. Dr. Tudor, I see your hand is up.
Hi, quick clarifying question. Jen Tudor, Assistant Chief Medical Officer at the county. I just wanted to clarify the concerns about January 1st. My assumption is that it's the changing in the Medi-Cal managed care plans. But if so, I was just curious about that because there is continuity of care, at least with the enhanced care management services, since it's a benefit. And historically, San Diego's done really, really well with plans leaving.
Correct. Jen, Dr. Tudor, you're cutting in and out a little bit. We didn't catch that last statement.
It was if so, San Diego historically has done a fantastic job of transitioning members as managed care plans leave the market. They've done really well with transitioning information.
We've lost you again, but can you hear me? Sort of a thumbs up, thumbs down?
As well as obviously the new plan, as well as obviously the new plans.
All right, Dr. Tudor, you're cutting in and out and we're missing, I think, probably the most critical piece. And I'm going to just kind of jump in really quick to say that I know you guys are busy and have a number of meetings, but the
Can you hear me better? Sorry, I'm driving.
Now we can.
Oh, okay, I'm just going to pull over. Sorry, I couldn't do a thumbs up driving. My comment was if it is the transition of managed care plans in January 1st, then historically our managed care Medi-Cal plans in San Diego have done a great job as they're exiting the market, providing information and heads up to those new plans accepting the members. In fact, United's plan has been adopted as the state plan, and there is continuity of care. So managed plans, should be getting those names. There is continuity of care required in enhanced care management, so it's a benefit. Hopefully they're building their networks, but even still, there's then that process to pay an out-of-network provider. Community supports is different. And I hope that we'll all be, doing just as great a job with those as we do with ECM. But that was just my quick comment. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. The other thing that I'll add is that the managed care plans came together and agreed to do, similar to how we have Calium Academy, a joint session next week to talk specifically about managed care plan transitions. And we'll share that link with you as well. But they will be presenting some of that information next week during that event. And then in addition to that, and I think even maybe the same day, and I forget if it's the same day or not, will be the first batch of some of their transitioning of Medi-Cal beneficiaries. So a lot happening, recognize a lot happening in the next couple of weeks. But we do know that that is something that everybody is interested in. And like I said, the managed care plans have come together and they'll be presenting at that event. But Jenna, the moral of the story is hopefully, and we know that nothing is perfect. The other thing that may be interesting to kind of explore is, you know, during this transition, how can the CPI help support if there are little things that kind of come bubble up and you know, kind of feel like they're slipping through the cracks. Maybe we could talk a little bit more about what that process would be. Okay, if let's go through this, and then Jenna, I'll put you on the spot to tell me if you think it makes sense or not. So what we'd like to do over the next month, and I know it's a busy one, is to add another layer or test of change that we can consider as it relates to enhanced care management and community supports implementation. And we'll plan to kind of do this in this model. And if for whatever reason it doesn't work, we'll be pulling in aspects of this model sort of behind the scenes. So if it's something that makes sense to you, awesome. If it doesn't, don't worry about it. It doesn't mean that that you will lose out on participating. We'll be working hand in hand to kind of connect the dots. Next slide, please. Cool. So here's what we're proposing for today. We're proposing 3 breakouts, 3 different options to choose from. You can self-select, and I'll outline each of them in a little bit more detail. But option 1 is think about improving standardization and processes related to billing to increase timeliness. And it's not just sort of a one sort of solution model. It's to talk about different aspects of that process, education, best practices, maybe additional details specific for claims, talking about what does a clean claim mean, what are some of the complexities or variabilities associated with that as well. Option 2 is to test a process for direct referrals. So it's not to solve, we're not saying let's solve these problems. These will, I believe, all still be things that we say are problems in 2024, where we're talking about them and we're working about them in our sessions. But to kind of dig deep and get very granular about really understanding it at a micro level and kind of seeing where we might be able to tease out something that we could do to change. Option 3 is a little bit broad, but it kind of encompasses a process for leveraging existing infrastructure. So there are things that exist that are unique to San Diego that don't exist in other regions across the state. And we would love to get a better understanding based on those resources, what the experience is. And for those that are doing things really well and it's working for them, what specifically is it that's working? And for those that are consistently running into a barrier, what are those barriers consistently, and how can we think about a potential change or solution? So that's my spiel about the 3 groups. And now, Jenna, I'm going to ask you, does that make sense to you? And then also, does it feel like it's something meaningful to do for today? And it's okay if you say no. Okay. Okay, so, all right, so with that, if you want to go, Shelby, to the next slide for me. All of this is on a Google Sheet, but option 1, we're digging a little bit deeper. We're asking you what the need is. We're asking you for something. And then we're also helping to frame up that work. So we're not saying this is what you must do, but we're using these 2 things as guardrails to help get to that test in a quick way, and also to kind of minimize, hopefully, the lift of doing any of that work associated with that test. And again, like I said, this is on the page, so I'm not going to read through it in detail. It does require some volunteers, both from managed care plans and from providers. If we can't get there, that's okay too. We'll talk about it. Next one, option 2. Again, like I said, what are we doing? Open discussion, the questions that we're asking, and what we need in order to facilitate that test. What data needs to be collected over the next week or 2 in order to kind of evaluate a little bit further. And then the last one, again, with regard to the discussion and the needs, these are on the Google Sheet. And I'll say before you break out into those different rooms 2 things. Work has already been done by individuals that are on this very line today to document some of these things. And in fact, on that same Google Sheet, work has been done associated with some of these things as well. We'll continue to try and align that back into this structure. And we're going to test to see if this structure helps us move further faster. Okay. I have 3 groups. I'll need a scribe for each group. And Shelby, Emily, and I, it's the 3 of us today. So we're gonna start by checking in with each of the groups, and then I'll pop in to each of the groups to make sure that we're on the right track. We don't normally like to do this. We normally like to hang out with you in each of the breakout rooms. So sorry in advance that we're not able to do that today. But we do recognize that that's something that is important, and that's something that we need to continue to try to do moving forward. Any questions before we break out? Emily, what do we have for time? So we have 25 minutes. Again, not a huge lift. We just want some basics around data collection. You're going to see a breakout room with everybody's name on it. It says unassigned. You're going to hit that little arrow next to that bold unassigned, and you're going to bring that information up, and you will see the 3 groups for today. And you can go ahead and self-select. Once everybody is into a room, we will start to join each of the rooms and make sure that everybody is on track.
I don't think it's working.
Robert, you tell me what room do you want to go in, and we can assign you there.
Give me 2.
Number 2, you got it. You're on your way.
Denise,
Yes.
this is Cami. I'm wondering which is better for me to join, 2 or 3. Do you have an opinion? There seems to be a little kind of crossover for both.
I would say either or.
Okay.
I think 3 would put you in a answering questions.
Sure.
place, but number two may put you in a different sort of creative space around what something like that looks like by leveraging the CIE, which I think would also be really interesting to explore.
Okay, thank you.
We've got about 15 unassigned right now. I'm seeing some notes here. We're going to work on getting you guys assigned. Sure thing. Diana, how about you? Where would you like to go?
I'm not really even clear on what the 3 or if there's more than 3 rooms. Like, I don't know what the difference is. So I guess I would say just put me anywhere.
Okay, well, why don't we put you in the same group as Robert? Does
Okay,
that make sense?
sure.
I think so, yes. James, I see you on the line. Is there a preference? You may be multitasking. If you are, that's fine. We can have you hang out in unassigned. Oh, looks like he's moved over. Carrie, how about you? Do you need any help getting into a room?
Yeah, she's saying I think she wants to volunteer.
Okay, perfect. Tanisha?
Hi.
Hi,
I
how
have,
are you?
I'm good, thank you. I have a question that I was just waiting for everyone to kind of pop into the
Okay, all
room.
right, hold on. Let's see. Shelby, do we have 2 other people on here. Can you do me a favor and put them into another room unless if anybody else wants to come off of mute? One of them is a phone number.
Yeah, if they're okay, I'm gonna put them in one since they only have 5 people in there.
Thank you so much for that. And then Tanisha, I'll go ahead and answer, hopefully answer your question. Shelby and Emily, depending on your comfort level, if you want to pop into a group and see how they're doing, great. If not, I can do that as soon as I hopefully answer Tanisha's question. All right, you're
Yeah.
on deck.
Thank you. So
Denise, you're on mute.
Whatever it was I was saying was super important. I'm just, throwing that out there. How do you guys feel about the exercise? Was it helpful? Was it not helpful? Did it feel more structured? Did you have a different outcome as a result or no? Thank you for the thumbs up. Anybody else? We're not scared of critical feedback.
I didn't get here in time to give none.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Well, for folks who participated, if you have feedback that you'd rather share one-on-one, I'll put my email address in the chat. You're welcome to reach out to me. We're trying to kind of get smaller and also try and work on something that we can do that isn't largely labor intensive, but also can kind of move in a forward direction. So any and all feedback is really important to make this work the best for the participants involved. And you all have more skin in the game than I do. So if it's not working for you, then we chuck it and we look at something different. I'm going to put my email in the chat. And we can go ahead and move to the next exercise. I'll be following up on those 3 groups in the next week or so. And if we feel like we didn't do anything, I may poke and pester folks to see if we can get something done in the next week or so. You know, we don't mind doing some of the administrative work too, folks. So we know you're busy. We know we're asking you for another thing, and I'm sure that there's been 30 other people asking you for 30 other things. So happy to work in in the space that you have available for us. Okay, so I don't multitask really good anymore, so I'm putting my email in the chat. We can go to the next slide, shall we? All right. This is just to show you all of the crazy cool things that are happening in the next few months. I'll focus on the 3 that are happening really soon. The first is the managed care plan transition. We talked about that earlier today. Thank you to all the managed care plans who came together and agreed to do that. I know you all are also focused on 90 million other things. So hopefully this makes it easier and makes messaging more singular and more effective and efficient for the folks receiving the message as well. So excited to have that happen. Next one we talked about earlier too is the data exchange framework. It is what it says it is. It's about data exchange. If you're interested, sign up. It's next Friday. Rachel's presenting. She's a way better presenter than I am. You're going to love her. She's really knowledgeable on everything data exchange framework. Last but absolutely not least, our second installment of the Lunch and Learn by the Managed Care Plans. For those of you who don't remember, we've done this once before. We dig a little bit deeper by managed care plans. Each of the managed care plans presents, so we host, but in the Lunch and Learn, there is more discussion from each of the managed care plans talking about some of their processes and procedures around authorizations, referrals, etc. I'll probably kick things off with some of the basic stuff, and then we'll do round robin with the managed care plans. We got 2 more meetings in the month of November and in December. If you didn't catch Emily's message before, we canceled the coffee chats for November and for December because with the holidays, with everything else that you all have going on, and with us throwing some additional Calium Academy sessions your way, we just didn't have the heart to add yet another meeting. So we canceled those for November and December, but I may have a Slack poll about coffee chats in general. I want to kind of get an idea of the structure of them and talk a little bit about, you know, if they continue in 2024, what would they look like, and how would they be meaningful for you all? I mean, I guess I love to talk, but talking at you all for an hour and a half is not my favorite thing to do. So, okay, cool. So that's everything that's going on. It's in the Slack. There's emails about it. And the next thing that we have is sort of transitioning to the managed care plan office hours. We've got all the managed care plans on the line. And again, for those who registered, you submitted questions in advance. Some of those questions are general questions. I think we're putting the finishing touch on a FAQ that we'll send out hopefully shortly. And then for other questions specific to a managed care plan, you're going to go ahead and select their room. Remember, unassigned shows up first. You got to hit that little arrow, and that will take you to each of the managed care plan rooms. For those of you who are not interested in participating in the managed care plan office hours, have a great rest of your Friday. Enjoy your weekend. Thank you for making the time today. We really appreciate it. And we'll talk to you all soon.